Hi guys, I'm the owner of the Yellow Spooky channel. Vim gives a brief message to you subscribers of the channels. Quickly, you want to learn how to make money every day on the internet? Find out you can bill from $5 to $10,000 a month at home with the marketing market. Download now our exclusive ebook.
If we would ever be able to escape the dark forest alive. At the time, the cheers sounded more like screams. Let me explain. I was a 14-year-old girl who loved skateboarding with her best friend. We were little petite punk girls who loved to explore and skateboard. My friend was over at my house, but everyone there was transfixed by the football game. The whole neighborhood was filled with the noises of people cheering on the Seahawks. It was, and still is, a safe and normally quiet upper-middle-class neighborhood. It was around maybe 7 or 8 p.m., but by this point, it was very dark. Not pitch black, but that deepest, darkest blue that remains until midnight. My friend had cigarettes, and we decided we were going to sneak away and skateboard to the forest, down the street, to smoke and hang out in the woods. The woods were a long stretch of forest that rested in the middle of our neighborhood. On each side, steep slopes ran upward and backed into the fences of people's houses. Everyone called it a green belt because the only entrance was at the beginning, and the only exit was at the other end. It felt like you were in a valley of sorts, surrounded by trees and houses far above. All of the neighborhood kids explored it, and it wasn't uncommon to find hidden trails that led toward makeshift forts. Anyway, we arrived at the forest, and walked until we found a clearing far enough away from the entrance that the adults couldn't see us smoking. At the time, we didn't realize this, but almost every single adult was inside watching the Super Bowl. It felt safe there in the dark, smoking and laughing with my friend, because we could hear cheers echoing from nearby houses. We had enough cigarettes to each have our own, but we liked sharing one at a time and passing it back and forth. It made us feel connected and cool. We were sharing our second cigarette, which was in between my fingers. I remember my friend laughing and trying to grab it from me. All of a sudden, she stopped laughing. Her eyes grew wide, and she slowly pointed behind me. "Not going to work, Jess." I thought she was trying to make me look away so she could grab the cigarette out of my hand. I could barely hear her whisper over the cheers that echoed through the forest. "I am not joking." I turned around and looked behind me, my eyes squinting in the dark. I didn't see anything until I looked at the top of the slope. The top of the slope, which ran about 50 feet up, wasn't that far from us. There, a man was standing, watching us. The woods were almost always empty, except for the occasional kid or teenager. Adults just used the woods as a place to dump yard clippings and old compost stuff. He was wearing all black and had on a ski cap, his hands deeply shoved into his pockets. I remember thinking he was very tall, though I couldn't see his facial features very well. I waved at him, wondering how long he had been standing there. It struck me that he may have been there for the whole time. I hoped it was a neighbor. I waited for him to yell at us for smoking, threatened to tell my parents, anything. He didn't wave back. He didn't make a sound. "Hello?" I choked out. The man didn't respond. His hands remained in his pockets, the dim light from a distant back porch behind him illuminating him ever so slightly. I whispered to my friend, "Jess, what do we do?" The man took his hands out of his pockets. He had gloves on, but not gardening gloves. He walked one step down the slope towards us. I could hear the sound of the leaves crunching beneath him. He stood still again, watching, waiting. More cheers erupted in the distance. The cheers that sounded so comforting less than half an hour ago now sounded foreboding. "I don't know," I whispered. "If we scream, no one would even be able to hear us. Everyone's screaming right now." Tears began to pool in her eyes. I had never seen her cry, and I had known her for 9 years by this point. I decided that I had to think, and fast. The man took another step. "What?" I screamed. "What do you want from us?" He began to pull his ski cap down. It was then we realized it wasn't a ski cap, but rather a ski mask. I yelled at her, "Run! Grab your skateboard!" At the time, I was thinking we could hit him with our skateboard if he tried anything. Probably silly, being as we each only weighed about 100 pounds or less. We got up and began running out of the woods. Like a horror movie, the man simply walked at a fast pace after us. I guess we weren't running very fast, because we were each holding a skateboard. Once we got out of the woods, it was all uphill toward my house. The man was a house length's distance or so behind us. His mask was pulled up again at this point. I wanted to ring a neighbor's doorbell, yell, anything, but we were so scared. Scared no one could hear us. Scared that if we ran to a neighbor's house that they wouldn't be home. We ran as fast as we could up that dang hill. We were about 3 houses away from my home when the man behind us just stopped. We kept running anyway, and we made it back to my house, breathing heavily and covered in dirt from running through the forest. What exactly had just happened? "Girls, there you are!" I thought my dad was angry that we had left without asking. Instead, he just sighed and said, "Well, the Seahawks just lost the Super Bowl." I was in 2nd grade, and it was another average Sunday filled with football parties. That Sunday might have been the Super Bowl, but I can't remember exactly. My parents were hosting a party, and hers were at one of our neighbors' parties. Both of us being little girls, we weren't very interested in sticking around for the game, or to listening to adults shove food down their throats and scream at TVs for a couple of hours. If you haven't seen an American football party or gathering, people take it like it's a religious feast and sacrament. We decided to go take a walk around the neighborhood to get a breath of fresh air with my puppy. Among our short walk, we wound up at the ditch, which was what all of us kids named the retention basins in the neighborhood. There were 2, and we were at the one closer to her house. We ran for a couple of minutes with my dog, when, for lack of a better description, a man who appeared to be the real-life Peter Griffin, which for some reason I recognized he looked like that character, but only being 7 didn't know the name, exited a dingy-looking old standard car. He waddled over to us and asked,
"Excuse me, have you 2 girls seen a black cat around here?"
We shook our heads, and immediately I could tell something was off about this guy. Beady little eyes darting behind the circular wire glasses, and an almost nervous shuffle raised a flag in my head. Even my puppy was staying at the side instead of running up for pets from this guy. He then proposed,
"Can you help me look for her?"
while holding his arms out, palms up. I'm not sure what his point of motions were for, nor do I care to reflect upon it now. Little 2nd grade me had sudden flashbacks of Yellow Dino, which was some character that taught us about stranger danger, which we had watched the previous week. My idiotic friend cheerily replied, "Sure," while I shouted no. I grabbed her by the wrist and started sprinting with her to our neighbor's nearby house, where her parents were. They were less concerned about the fact we were nearly abducted, and more that I had my puppy in the house, so we got kicked out and sent back to my house. I told my parents, and they were generally alarmed, but also too invested in their party to particularly do anything about it, so there was never closure. We never ran into that man again, luckily. My first post here. Sorry for the length. Back in my 20s, I had moved in with my boyfriend, who owned a house. The house was an old 3-bedroom, 2-story that he had shared with his 2 friends. My significant other wanted to rent the upstairs after his friends moved out, and took out an ad in the paper. A soft-spoken young man called. We interviewed him, and he was small, neat, quiet, and a student at a chef school. We were right on his bus route. He had no car. He also cooked on the weekends for a church retirement home 5 blocks south of us, so this was perfect for him. Dave seemed fine. On move-in day, he showed up dragging items down the street from the bus stop onto our lawn in 2 cardboard boxes. My friend offered to go get the rest of his things because otherwise he would have to make several bus trips carting belongings. We noticed during this time that he seemed to be not quite there, but we shrugged it off to being tired and stressed from moving. As we begin to bring his things upstairs, I noticed that most of the items appeared to be items a 10-year-old boy would have. Toys, books for that age, many notebooks and journals written in a shaky, childlike writing all across the covers, just loosely thrown in old cardboard boxes. It was then that I noticed the old metal play school mailbox. You know, the old toy ones that were 10-inch tall replicas of the actual dome-shaped ones on street corners, complete with the words post office embossed in the metal on the side and a drop slot. It was painted matte black, and as I picked it up, I saw the word shame had been painted carefully over the post office on both sides, in large white letters. I shook it and heard paper shuffle about. I gave my SO a glance and cocked my head at the mailbox I held, turning it ominously until he could read the big white shame. Both our eyebrows went up in unison. Dave came down and I asked him about what the shame box was. I wanted to know what we were getting into after a month lease had been signed. He mumbled something under his breath about writing down ideas that were bad and wouldn't meet my eyes. Then he took a box of papers and hightailed it upstairs. Shameful. Okay, I get it. It's in big letters on the damn metal toy. I mouthed the word bad at my SO. He frowned at me for teasing him, and I dropped the subject. Upstairs, I purposefully set Dave's shame box down in front of him, thinking it has a special place reserved. Dave was busy stapling dozens of Boys Life magazine covers all over the wall. He's wallpapering with Boys Life. I stop what I'm doing and just look at the pictures, because it's weird. Boys Life was a magazine from the whatever era before I was born, and he's younger than me. These were 1950 covers, showing 1950s boys posing while water skiing, hiking, badmintoning, etc., in cheesy Kodachrome photography. I thought that maybe he collected them, or maybe he was just into guys. No problem. But these were really young boys. They're full of staple marks and careful tears from previous walls, and they seem much loved. At this point, I'm getting a weird vibe. We're back downstairs now. I walk in the kitchen where he was putting away his kitchen stuff, and I find him standing on the kitchen table, hoisting a clear bear-shaped bottle of honey over his head, doing some kind of weird snake undulation as he watched the sun refract through the amber honey, like it was the freaking mystery of the universe. Maybe mushrooms? Acid or something? I ask what he's doing and if he can come down off the table so he doesn't fall, figuring he's tripping balls. I chalk it up to that. Hopefully it's just recreational use. He gets settled and we don't cross paths really over the next few days, what with work schedules. Weird things continue around him and I'm starting to think he has some sort of mental disorder. My SO makes a note of the situation. Super Bowl Sunday, he walks into our living room, pacing in front of the TV loudly chanting, "Super Pig in a Blanket Bowl," over and over in a sing-song voice. We ask him a few times to move so we can watch. I finally have to physically escort him out of the way. My SO and I have become used to just glancing at each other with a raised brow look to make sure we're each catching these weird things. We've discussed that he must be high functioning if he can attend school and hold a job. We begin to think of a way to break the lease. Another time, my SO makes a sandwich and turns to get something out of the fridge as Dave walks to the kitchen with his backpack on from the basement. My significant other turns back and the sandwich is gone. He runs to the front door and Dave is walking down the street eating the sandwich, having snagged it on his way in an impressive yet aggravating swoop. He yells at him and Dave just raises the sandwich in the air like Rocky, and then turns with his freaky grin before going to catch the bus. More strange things are happening, and when we confront Dave, he just looks at us blankly, or just says in his small voice, "Oh, okay." Another day, he comes up from the basement in the morning as we're making breakfast. We assume he's been doing laundry because the basement is pretty unfinished, old, and dank and dark. "Hi, Dave. You want some?" He walks past and out the door, I guess to work. We sit down to eat and begin talking, when we hear more footsteps coming up the creaky wooden stairs. Huh? Up comes this tiny old man from our basement that we've never seen before, disheveled, clutching something small that's a ball of clothes or a blanket. We stare open-mouthed, and no one says a word. Was this Dave's homeless friend? Creepy escort lover? Dave never mentioned socializing or friends, and the guy was Dave's great-grandfather's age. The man makes eye contact and sees he's obviously starless, and bolts out the back door from the kitchen like a criminal. My SO looks at me and rushes down to the basement, where he finds blankets and other stuff made into a makeshift bed in our floor. What the fuck? We wait to talk to Dave about this guy, an appropriate place as guests should be, like not being camped out in a basement being all creepy and stuff. I was honestly concerned this old dude was taking advantage of him somehow. But Dave doesn't come home. Not the next day or night. Not several days. He just vanished. So we begin to worry. I got a call a few weeks later, and it's a doctor from the university hospital where Dave has been in the psych ward. The doctor asks if I'm Dave's roommate, and is it okay for him to be remanded to me from the hospital when it's time to discharge. What? Turns out, Dave had an episode at his work where he stabbed his coworker with a kitchen knife in an argument. What the actual fuck? I'm trying to nope the hell out of this doctor's remanded care suggestion. I finally tell him that we have no idea what the hell is going on and are not responsible for him and are scared to have him in our house. The doctor indicates Dave's been placed on medication that has stabilized his schizophrenia. He's under social services care and is no longer a threat. In the end, he comes home with the understanding that he has to find new arrangements immediately. We contacted the church he worked for and they put him up in a place. Last I heard of him, so yeah. We didn't rent out again after that. What's up, guys? It's Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you for watching to the end of the video, especially if you made it this far. We're getting pretty close to 2,000 subscribers already, and it feels like we just hit 1K like a week ago or something like that. I don't know, maybe it was a week ago. Anyways, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for the support you've been getting me. I've been getting a lot of really nice comments about the videos. So, thank you guys for that. If you guys have any constructive criticism, please leave it in the comments below. And if you have any stories that you'd like to send in, or any stories that you'd like me to read, links to my social media will be in the description, so you can go ahead and message me on those. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.